Welcome to The Shield Within. The issues discussed on the Shield Within podcast do not reflect the opinions of any specific agency. They are the views of the host and the guest. Any persons discussed may be fictional for comedic purposes only. This podcast is rated explicit and listener discretion is advised. Listening to The Shield Within may trigger repressed or suppressed memories or experiences. Please contact a mental health professional at your earliest convenience. It's time for the chaos to cease.
Time to open yourself to peace.
From the hours you've put in.
To the next shift you begin.
From the endless pursuit of release.
That finds the worst unleashed.
Transform the ugly into a win.
Get to know your shield within.
Welcome to the Shield Within. I kind of miss having Dr. David over there saying welcome, because he's always so happy whenever we do the show together. This is the second part of a two-part series with our good friend Ricardo Martinez from Within the Trenches podcast. This is just such a fun interview that we did. We talked and talked. And whenever you have that vibe with someone like we did with Ricardo, it's always just such a pleasure to do. I think with this one here, we're going to do some different things. But these two interviews, the episode 1, episode 2, were just so good that we're maybe doing a third one with him as well. So Ricardo has done Within the Trenches is the dispatch side of things. And his mantra is I am 911. So he talks about the stories throughout the nation with our dispatchers. And our dispatchers are always our first line in public safety. And within the interview, and Ricardo talked about having the gift of closure. And I thought that was really special. So without further ado, we'll get to the second half of our interview Within the Trenches. Real quick, if you're on Facebook, we know you are, Facebook / The Shield Within, or our website, www.shieldwithin.com. If you're in need, reach out and punch that coaching button. You can talk to Dr. David yourself and become one of his clients, or go to lessonslearnedcoaching.com. So without further ado, here's our episode 2, and thank you for being here.
Hey, what is going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. I was saying it so fast that I stumbled over my tongue and my lips. That's how we're going to start this out. But I am sitting here with the crew from the Shield Within podcast. We have been having an excellent time. We recorded one episode already. We've got this one here that we're going to be doing as well. And I am here with Marc the Cop and Dr. David. How's it going?
Hello.
Hello, everyone. It is an honor to be here speaking with you today.
Mm-hmm.
And it is excellent to have you both here, and just everything that we were talking about before and what we're going to be going through. But what I want to say really first, just as a distinction, as Dr. David had said before, how did that name come about?
Well, Mark and I were trying to figure out what the hell to call me.
Great question.
And so as we were doing Stream of Consciousness for our first couple of episodes, it was like, we need to call this guy something.
Yeah.
So Mark decided it was Dr. David.
Yeah, I think it's episode 3.
I love it.
I think it's called He Has a Nickname Now is the name of it. And, when you first start out podcasting, your first couple episodes, if you go back and listen to them, you're like, oh, God, that's awful. It's like biting into a lemon that's been there, laying there for a while. But, it kind of had a good ring to it because we were calling him Master Yoda. David is a clinical therapist for like 50 years. I dig it. He kept me alive for several years. I discovered my, journey. I ended up in David's office one day, just lost and, suicidal and whatever else. But so in a way, he's a saver of souls. And he's done remarkable, wonderful work with first responders, and his vast knowledge over the years. I think he's earned his doctorate, but we don't have any accredited university saying, yes, sir, you are now blessed to be a doctor. But right. I think Master Yoda may
we'll have to knight you.
yes, yeah. Hit him on both shoulders with a sword. But Master Yoda, we were afraid we were going to get a letter from Lucasfilms to cease and desist. So Dr. David, it is
right.
Right. Yeah. Disney doesn't fuck around, man. Like they'll take you down.
Easy.
Right.
Yeah. Disney and Nintendo, like those are companies that do not mess around with their trademarks.
Yeah.
Like you will get destroyed. You will get a cease and desist. Now, Marc the Cop.
Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just going to say, Marc the Cop. How did you get your name? It's kind of obvious, right? But
well, that is a unique story. That's a great question. We haven't had that before in an interview. So I did a comedy podcast. It was called The It List. They're still on the air. A good friend of mine, ironically enough, the little bit of the backstory is I was off on an internal affairs investigation. Can you imagine that, Dr. David? A great guy like me, honest, law enforcer, I got caught up in the last sheriff's race, as a matter of fact. So as it worked out, I ended up in internal affairs. So while I'm over here cooling my jets at the MTC studios now, I was on IA for 72 days. My friend's like, we need to start a podcast, because we all get together and he plays music and we played music together. I'm a bass player and, people would sit around and shoot this shit with us and say, you guys are fucking hilarious. Y'all take this show on the road. So we came up with the show. And because we all were working professionals, we needed an anonymous name. So I'm not going to go out there and say I'm Sergeant so-and-so with such and such police department. Obviously, that's a fucking red flag. So,
right. Yeah.
My friend, he's Fathead Joel, because he worked at the time for Centerville Parks and Recs. He doesn't work there anymore, so I can say that. But, we all had jobs. So, we had Mikey No Name. He worked for a large corporation. We just didn't want, because I'm pretty foul-mouthed and, have a really garbage or gutter booger fart joke humor. So if you listen to the first couple of years of the show, the show I guess is still doing pretty good since we got into the Shield Within. Matter of fact, Joel helped get the Shield Within rolling. So thank you, Joel, for that. But he's the one who threw the name on me, Marc the Cop, and then we tell the story about how him and I met, which his brother is a police officer locally in an adjacent jurisdiction. But when he first came out of the Marine Corps, we became friends. And he worked at a local convenience store. Of course, me, a new cop, stopped in there, and him and I had a lot of common ground. So when I met Joel, hey, Joel, how you doing? The wind was blowing, and he and spits, and the booger went, woo, and turned, and ended up on me.
Oh.
He was like,
oh, no.
Oh, my God, I'm about to get arrested. I just spit on a cop. So, so we exchanged some pleasantries at that, and I'm like, you motherfucker. But, yeah, that's how it turned out. So we had a great friendship for there. So Joel gave me the name, Marc the Cop, so it kind of stuck. And then, of course, everyone else, the other monikers are on, but I'm the only Marc the Cop. So, there's the story.
Nice. Well, and that's awesome, too, to have those, anonymous type names. Mm-hmm. But there are folks that I have seen where, let's just say for, those on X or, formerly Twitter, on X, you'll see on the profile that it says like my views do not, reflect where I work or whatever. And I would always think, it does. Like, it doesn't matter if you put that out there. It's like you are always representing who you work for or, what you do. Right. I would go to conferences and people would say, how come you're not drinking more? And I would say, because I'm representing myself. Yes. My company and my brand that I'm building currently. And anything could happen where, any little thing, like someone might be taking a video or a picture and there I am acting like a dumbass or whatever. Not that it's wrong that I'm having fun, but in society, like a lot of people, they just like, whoa, how are we going to trust this person if they're doing this or that? And it just sucks, right? Because sometimes people suck. And so, and it's true. Sometimes people do, man. The people that are out there that are, I'll say this really quick before we get more into your guys' stories here. When I first started doing a lot of the episodes where I would be playing audio and talking about some of that audio, I remember someone tweeting out when this was still Twitter. So this was years ago. Someone had tweeted out to me and tagged me and said, I really hope that I never get you as one of my dispatchers taking one of my emergencies because you don't care at all. You're just making fun of callers.
Oh my goodness.
And I responded saying, this is dark humor. And what I'm sharing is not making fun of the caller.
Right.
It's talking about and laughing at the situation, not the caller.
Exactly.
I love what I do, and I respect people that call in.
Exactly.
But in 911 and a lot of other places, there's some shit that you can't make up. And I remember after that, there were other people who were now tweeting at this person saying, if I didn't, specifically, there was a nurse who jumped in on this and responded to that person saying, have you ever seen or smelled burnt flesh off a person? If I didn't laugh or have dark humor about certain things, I would never make it through this. And after that, I thought, I don't even have to respond anymore because everyone is responding now.
Good. That's awesome.
That's why I mean,
that person took that up.
Some people suck.
And what do we call them?
So
Karens? My sister-in-law's named Karen, so our apologies to anyone named Karen, but the person that has that attitude that's, oh, well, that's mean, and I hope this mean person doesn't. Hey, lady, let me tell you something. If you go into anywhere and make an ass of yourself the moment you walk out of the room, you're getting mocked. So if you think that doesn't happen, you better wake the fuck up because, we're all humans. We're all here. We're in all of us sitting around this table right now, including you, sir. We're all people of service, and we're serving others, and we don't take that lightly. And I love that analogy. Have you ever smelled burnt flesh? You ever treating a wound? Yeah. Until that day comes, shut the fuck up. But we deal with this, and this is how we do it.
People don't understand. They don't understand it at all. Right. So that's how you guys got your names and everything. Now let's go back to some of that work history, what it was like in the beginning, because this is some of the stuff that I ask my guests and everything, and I want the audience to learn more about the both of you. So looking at Dr. David, let's look at your background and everything. How did you get started in public safety and everything that it is that you do?
Well, let's see. To make a really long story tolerable, I began. I finished high school, had college to go to. I had the idea at the time that I would go to theology school after college and become a chaplain. I didn't want to have like a church, but I thought being a chaplain would be fun. So I got into my college and I started taking courses in theology. And I took a lot of courses in Greek, the language that the Bible is written in, New Testament in particular. And so I studied and came to the realization after not even about a year that I did not want to go up this street. This was not for me. So I got out of theology, and the classes that interested me were sociology and psych. I had a psych professor first year in college that was not outstanding, but she was good. She intrigued me. The subject intrigued me. So second year in college, they started a crisis hotline in the little town the college was in. And I thought, sounds good. So I signed up, loved the training, loved all the scenarios that we did and all the stuff that we had to cover, the drug stuff going on, the just school stuff going on, family stuff, just lots of stuff going on in the community. And the first night that we opened, I was asked to be the first person to work, which was really cool. And I got really good at it. So I did phone work for 2 years and got very skilled at dealing with people that we came to be known as chronic callers. Excuse me, people that would just call to call.
Right.
They didn't really need anything more than another voice on the other end of the phone.
Oh.
So out of that, I thought, nope, this is my thing. This is what I want to do, and I know I can't do anything with a bachelor's degree, so I need to go to graduate school. I went to graduate school, got a master's in counseling psychology. Years later, about 10 years later, 15, the state of Ohio decided to formalize people who do what I do. So I applied to become what the state of Ohio called a clinical counselor, professional licensed professional clinical counselor. I haven't said that in a long ass time. And so I got the license, and then I worked for a psychology firm for a number of years, and then I went out on my own. And I did what I've always done, which was to work with kids. I worked with kids from day one for a long, long time, mostly foster kids, all ages. Got involved in some court situations, a lot of testimony in court, but I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I got contracts with children's services, juvenile courts, all the schools in the area, and I just loved it. Well, I had a family from the area and had a kid, 14, who was very depressed. Mom brought him in. I started seeing him. Things went well, let's just say. Mom was very impressed with the work that her son and I had done, so she came to me one day unannounced by herself, and she said, "You're going to work with me. I'm your new client." And I said, I don't do adults. I just do kids, man." And she said,
"We're going to let that go, Ricardo."
And she said, "Till today, you're going to do me." And I said, "Okay." So we started on our journey. About 3 months later, I got home from work. She called me on the phone, and her rapist had just left the house.
Oh, my God.
So we spent the next 4 hours on the phone.
Wow.
She said early on in the conversation, because I said, "Okay, let me call the cops. Let me get you to the ER. I'll meet you there. You call the cops, you'll never see me again." Okay.
Man.
And you're going to get me to work tomorrow morning. I am not missing a minute of work because of this. So we got her to work the next morning. And we got her to work every morning, because she and I talked for at least an hour every night for a long time. And I realized as we worked on this, just making her functional, that I knew my skill set was just not adequate to the task. So I get, therapists get flyers all the time, advertisements for this kind of therapy, this training, whatever. And I kept getting these advertisements for something called EMDR. And I thought, this sounds good. I'd gotten a little bit of familiarity with some of the people that were doing the training. So I signed up for it. It was in Columbus and Cincinnati, a 2-year process. And it was life-changing for me. And pretty much the last 15 years of my career, all I did was trauma cases. Mostly women who were sexually violated, rape, sexual harassment, stalking, incest, tremendous amounts of women who had carried around incest for decades would say, "Okay, it's time for me to take this out of my head." So I did a lot of that for 15 years. Along the way, during that period, I had a couple of first responders, some people, one person in particular, Brian Gray, who I had known as a probation officer and a social work for children's services. And he then became a cop. And he got to a point where after he had been in Iraq, because he did that as well, he came back with some shit. And so he sought me out, remembered me from the days when we were both working with kids. And he came in, and we were able to utilize EMDR for some of the stuff he had brought back from Iraq. And then Mark said, "Brian, I need some help." So Brian pointed Mark in my direction, and I had also had a family of highway patrolmen during that early part of that 15 years period. I had a guy come in who was a teacher, and he was raised in a family with a highway patrolman. And I got an education on what the family life is like for a first responder. So I just started doing a lot of work with first responders, ended up with paramedics. I had a couple of years where I must have had 10, 15 different first paramedics, EMTs, mostly their families, because they themselves would come in the room and meet me and then walk right back out. But they would make their kids stay or their wife stay or their husband stay. Those folks were really hard to get to become clients. But the policemen, the veterans, the firemen, yeah, we hit it off really, really well. And Mark and I knew within minutes that we were going to do well together.
Yeah, we did a lot of work together.
We fit, and so much of what we emphasize on our show is find a therapist. And when you find a therapist, consider going to at least 3 of them for free 15-minute get to know each other kind of deals, where you get to imagine for 15 minutes working with this person. Imagine walking into their office on a random day afternoon appointment and you opening your mouth and you pour your guts out to this person. Can you imagine doing that with this person? And if your answer is yes, then you got your fit. If your answer is no, you keep looking.
Right.
Because the fit's going to determine so much of the therapeutic outcome. So Mark and I did really, really well. And then he referred a few other people to me, and Brian referred
a lot of referrals went to Dr. David.
And so I ended up with, a really close relationship with law enforcement. We just have a lot in common. So it's been a wonderful journey with law enforcement, and I'm doing coaching now. When I came back from Florida, as you did, Ricardo, my path changed. I didn't want to renew my clinical counseling license. I just thought, fuck that. I want to do something less formal, more strictly service-oriented, and to me, coaching does that. So I have a lot of first responders and or family members and or partners. And again, the resonance, the fit, the compassion for what they go through, we do real well together. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of
that's amazing, man.
Hopefully.
No, that was really good, and that's exactly what I was looking for as well. And I applaud and commend you as well for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Because there were times when I was in dispatch, and this one specifically, we had a sergeant who passed away suddenly. It wasn't in the line of duty or anything. It was a medical issue, but it happened like that. Mm-hmm. And we were all trying to just really work through it because we were so close to this one specific sergeant. And we were close to a lot of the folks that we worked with, but this one specifically. And I remember they brought in just a counselor, and I'm sure he was great at what he does, mm-hmm. but he didn't come from public safety and had never really worked with those in public safety. So when we went into that room, we mentioned, what had happened. And the first thing he says is, well, how does that make you feel? And then we all just kind of sat there and we looked at each other, and I was the spokesperson, I guess, for the group. And I turned around and I said, I don't think this is going to work. And we said, thank you. We were nice. We were nice about it, but it was that moment where we just knew like, this isn't going to work for us. And it's probably not going to work for this person either. So we went our ways and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they ended up sending us another person who actually was from public safety and had worked with a lot of folks already. So the crazy thing, though, was that in that situation, and David, I don't know if you can, I'm sure you've had experience with this as well, but the person came in and saw that we were working our asses off and just simply observed us and was like, how are you guys doing? How's the shift going? And we just had that little bit of small talk here and there. And then when it started to calm down a little bit, then we spoke a little more. Mm-hmm. And that approach was way better than anything else. It was just like you could feel it. The vibe was in the air. Like you could feel that this person knew what we were doing and was simply letting us do our thing. Mm-hmm. Because that's what was keeping our mind occupied and not really thinking about the sergeant that we just lost. Yeah. And then afterwards, when things started to calm down, then he kind of talked a little more. but it wasn't the, how does that make you feel? It was more so he was kind of filling in with some of his own experiences and stories. And so we were relating on that level, on that human level, where we completely understood because we come from the same place.
Yes.
So does that kind of make sense for some of the things that you've done as well?
Perfectly. Absolutely. You walk in, and what reminds me of very much is walking into consultations in a classroom. If you walk in the classroom, the teacher comes over to me and she says, "What do you want to know?" I say, I don't want to know a damn thing. Go do your job. Go work. Let me observe you and the child you want me to study. Let me just see how the next hour goes. If I need anything, I know where to find you. And I would just watch and observe. That's where the fit comes from. If you just walk in and assume that you know how to fit with these people, regardless of the context, you will fail. If you walk in and you pay attention, you shut the fuck up. Pay attention to what you're there for. You'll find a way to fit, a place to fit, a time to fit, and it'll go somewhere.
Absolutely.
Love that. Yes. No, I fully agree. And those who are going to be watching this as well from my audience are going to get a lot from that, because there's a big push to normalize, right? Going to therapy, finding someone that is the right fit for you.
Yes.
And to be able to be open and share certain things. So that's going to be huge. And so, like for Mark, throughout your years in public safety and everything, and of course, if you are fine sharing, I guess what were some of those moments that you were kind of going through in a sense as you were coming into this time that you're making contact with David, and kind of getting your own help as well?
Oh, well, from the police side, let me tell you, it was a fucking shit show. My first time was in 2008, 2009. I had just experienced, and you can appreciate this from the dispatch side. I had a gentleman that blew his head off in front of his mother, and I was at Brian Gray's office, as a matter of fact, that son of a bitch. But I'm joking. Brian's a great friend. So I get a dispatch. They're giving me out, and the dispatcher that day was great. Her name's Dawn. She's just high-speed load drag. She's a great gal. Possible gunshot wound. Unsure. Caller is uncooperative. I'm like, all right, here we go. I was talking about getting lunch. It was like 1 o'clock. I'm hungry. I'm like, hey, motherfucker, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm busy. Well, I'm going to take care of this. I'll be back. Right. Famous last words. So I go up to this affluential neighborhood. All the houses in there are $500,000 and up. $500,000 because, in the city I work with, everybody has a job in their own teeth. So that was a joke. So I like it. I get there, and it's snowy, and this is one of the only houses on the cul-de-sac where the driveway hasn't been cleared and the walks haven't been shoveled. So I'm like, that's odd. So I walk up, and this woman's standing in the front door of this large house just wailing. And I'm like, all right, go ahead and roll me another car. I'm going to need EMS. Get a hold of the supervisor and just get a hold of the detective sergeant too, and just roll them all this way. Just start rolling them. Okay, cool. She clears me. I walk in the house, and this woman in her 70s is just fucking hysterical. So what do? You go up and you be a human being with her. Come here. And she come up and she hugged me, and she just, I can't believe he just did that. And I'm like, what? And the garage door, the man door going out to the garage is open, and I look out there, and I see something laying in a beach chair. A beach chair's got the short feet, Well, when she walked up, he puts a 44 right between his eyes and pulls the trigger. And it blew his brains out into the driveway because the door was halfway up. Well, I didn't realize it. I'd walked through it going into the house. And I'm like, holy shit, when my dispatcher starts calling me, what do you need, blah, 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 or checkup, whatever. And she's pretty pissed at this point because I'm not answering. So I thought, and I was frustrated with her, so I just keyed the microphone up. And I let her listen to this woman for about 10 seconds. And I said, I can't talk right now. I just need you to give me what I need. And she came back very somber and said, clear. So I may get emotional, which is practice what it's about.
Right.
Because I'm back in Louie's house right now. I'm in my head. I'm smelling. I'm experiencing, which is our post-traumatic stress. So I'm living that a little bit right now as we're talking. This was the incident that what I refer to as flipped over my apple cart, and this was the one suicide call that sent me spiraling, and I didn't know this at the time. So. And at the time, it was no big deal. We worked the suicide, and we went and had spaghetti for lunch after that. Believe it or not. I know this sounds gross, but we were in a garage where there's literally red matter blasted. I mean, it went full 180 around the room. It's just much percussion.
Wow.
And the top of this guy's head looked like the top of my coffee cup here. It was just straight off, just like that. And the face had split this way and dropped, and these are the things, and you're talking about the smell of
right
the scene, right? So yucked it off, blah blah blah, we left, and one thing about it is that victim witness came, and this woman, she's hysterical, and then she shuts the fuck down. She doesn't know her name, she doesn't know who the president is, she doesn't know shit. So she was just on overload, and something inside her hit the reset button. So the squad took her off. Victim witness came down to try and, our victim witness with our prosecutor's office, their advocates, to try and settle her some way. And the one woman's like, well, I want to see this. And I said, oh, no, you don't. Don't go out there in that garage. You don't want to see this. I've seen it. I don't want to see it. And our detective's
right
there, and this is shit I don't want to see. And you want to go see this? Okay, so she went out, and I heard this blood-curdling scream as she looked at this guy's body as it sat there. And that, we did some EMDR on that, didn't we, Dr. David?
Yes, we did.
We did a lot of EMDR on this incident. So that was about a year and a half before I first met David, and fast forward a year and a half, my wife and I were separated by now. My life has turned into shit, and I'd made a lot of bad choices. And I was ready. I had my first suicide attempt then. I did an honor guard detail. So if you're going to go out, man, go out in style. But yeah, so I'm in my full honor guard uniform. I was going to blow my brains out on my desk in my honor guard uniform. Yeah, so I just did a funeral. And yeah, I threw the gun across the room. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Something's fucking wrong. So I made a phone call, and Brian's like, get down here. So I went down to Brian's house, and I sat there, and him and I talked. And he said, I need you to introduce you to my friend David. So called David, played phone tag for a week. And then he's like, yeah, as soon as I can see you is in a couple of weeks. And I went, but I need to see you now. I'm ready to do this now. And he's like, best I can do for you, dude. This is I just got a cancellation. I'll see you in 2 weeks. So, I had to cool my jets for 2 weeks, and I walked into his office, and, the rest is history. And kind of the flavor of the Shield Within podcast is to let everyone know that therapy can be fun. Mm-hmm. Therapy isn't as bad as what you think it is. Therapy is essential. I didn't realize the shit I'd been carrying. Up to that point, I'd been a law enforcement full-time for 8 years at that point, and I had part-time hours before that, which I saw plenty of blood, gore, and bullshit up to that point. So 18 years at that point, I'd been dealing with public safety. And David just started, I walked in the door, and he's like, so what brings you in today? And I'm like, is there anything official with this? He's like, no, dude. He was just super chill. I think I'd met him for 5 minutes, and he dropped an F-bomb on me. I'm thinking, I like this guy already. He's like, wow. And I said something about having an affair, and he's like, I don't give a fuck. Join the crowd. Go ahead. Or something like that. I'm like, oh, all right. So this is super chill. So, he and I hit it off, and he's like, well, let me see you in a couple of weeks. I'm like, couple of weeks? What do you mean? A couple of episodes, and we'll be done? And he said, no. So that was.
There's more to it than that.
Oh my gosh! Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. That was 2009. I'm still in therapy today. So there's we like to say in the public safety realm that most people, your average American, has one, maybe two major traumas in their life, and your average first responder, 600 to 800. So strap in, boys and girls. You got a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So the two of you end up coming together, and you end up working through this. Mm-hmm. And as you said, just a continued work in progress, which is a good thing. And what's interesting is earlier today, I posted something that basically is saying to concentrate more on the progress versus perfection.
And I got a like from the Shield Within podcast. I remember seeing that this morning. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I think that's a thing that we get caught up in a lot of times, no matter what it is, especially when we're looking at ourselves. And a lot of times you don't want to look in the mirror and see, oh, I might be the problem. It might be
we're hitting
me,
high fives
right?
Virtually, yes.
Yes. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. There's a lot of those times where when you finally have that oh shit moment, that's when you're finally having that courage to step through the door, to take that first step of healing, or even just sharing. Like I tell people, sharing is that first step, and then you continue to work on a lot of those things. That's why I share so many of my stories, because they will always be with me. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those, if I feel or if I'm sharing others who have been struggling and they hear it, man, that's going to give them the confidence to do the same thing. And I feel like with what both of you are doing with the Shield Within podcast is doing that same thing as well, where people are listening to your conversations, these candid, powerful conversations where it's serious, there's funny stuff, and then serious again, and then but still all very relevant to what people are talking about now, that they hear this and they now feel like, I can talk about this too. These guys have been doing this. They've gone through all of this shit. Well, now I can do the same thing. And one of the things that I love the most, Mark, about what you were saying when we were, talking about stuff on the episode earlier was that, you were talking about, the closure part, that you would, actually talk to some of those dispatchers. And if you could, you would let them know what would happen. And that goes a long way, because we don't always get that closure. And I'll share a story really quick with the both of you. Years ago, I had taken this call, and it had to do with an infant death. Oh. Now, what happened was when I got the phone call, it was mom, and I'm giving CPR instructions. Baby was blue, cold to the touch, but you ask, like, do you feel like they're beyond help? If not, like, let's do this. Like, I can get you through CPR until somebody gets there. And that's what we were doing. And what happened with the story, though, is that mom was working midnight shift. She had, I think, 3 or 4 kids or something like that. The youngest was an infant. Her mom, grandma to the kids, was there and taking care of them. And when mom wakes up, she doesn't turn the light on or anything, but she wakes up, goes into the living room and doesn't see the baby, and is like, where's the baby? And her mom, the grandma, ends up saying, well, I laid her next to you in the bed.
Oh, no.
So she goes back. Yeah, she goes back. And she's looking, she turns the light on, doesn't find baby, and then finally notices that baby was face down. Oh my God. It was a pile of towels. It was in a basket. Baby didn't make it. Okay. And when I got off the call, I was fucked up. I went through the whole thing, and I had, young kids as well at the time. So as a lot of us in service, we're empaths. We put ourselves in other people's shoes to be able to relate and do what we need to do. Right.
Amen, brother.
So I was there. I was in that moment, and I can see myself in dispatch now, just going through it. And I remember my supervisor, who was actually a person that I grew up with. Her and I went to school together. She graduated a year before me. And it was just funny that years later, we end up in dispatch together doing this job.
Yeah, that's cool.
And she ends up looking at me and she goes, are you okay? And I obviously what my answer was going to be, yeah, of course, I'm fine.
Fine.
But I wasn't fine. Yeah, no, I wasn't fine at all. Well, her husband was one of the sergeants that was working on our team. and they called for detectives to go out there. So now I'm even more messed up because I'm like, what the hell actually happened? So he ends up sending me a message and he goes, what do you need? And I said, I just need to know what happened. He comes up to dispatch and sits down with me and he gave me the gift of closure. And he told me everything that happened. The only reason that they had detectives out there was to make sure that there wasn't any foul play, which there wasn't.
Right.
And before the sergeant got out there, EMS called up and they asked for the person who took the call. And I pick up the phone. I said, hello, this is Ricardo. I took that call. And EMS says to me, I just want you to know that when we got out there, they were doing textbook CPR and you did everything in your power that you could.
Awesome.
But there was nothing that you could do any more than that would have helped the situation. I just want you to know that there was nothing left to chance, that you did everything that you could. And then for the sergeant to tell me everything that happened and basically said the same thing at the end, I will always be grateful for that gift of closure, because other calls after that, I didn't get that, but I was able to look back at that one and just knew that I was doing something. So the reason I'm sharing that story is because I wanted to say thank you to you for also having that thought process during that time, that if you could also give that gift of closure, because it means so damn much.
Yes. Well, and I always kind of put myself in the shoes of the dispatchers. You know, when I was first a young police officer, I drove by the dispatch center on the way home from the city. I drove right past it. So I made friends with a couple of guys there because they were on 12 hours before we were, and I was on an 8-hour shift. So, you know, instead of just going home and watching TV or playing video games, I thought, I'll stop in here and visit with you guys. And, is it okay? You know, no big deal. So when I'm in there shooting the shit, I said, I want to dispatch. And they're like, are you fucking serious? I said, yeah, I don't want to do the codes. You work the computer. I just want to get on the mic. So, so I just got on the mic, and the midnight sergeant of the sheriff's department messages in, is that so-and-so on the mic? Yeah, because I have a pretty distinct voice, you know, so pretty soon my crews were realizing that I'm up in dispatch working. I'm not working. I'm just up there fucking around, really. But, you know, in what I learned there was having that perspective. So all of our young officers after that, I sent their ass up to dispatch to spend half the shift. Now you're going to sit there, and if you feel confident, get on the mic, because everyone needs to know what you guys are going through. You know, you need to see what's going on. You need to hear what an asshole this guy is being, or how he comes off across the microphone. You know, so be professional when you're doing things. You know, listen to the screaming person calling in. You know, this is the chaos we're about to send you to. And God bless these people trying to extract information out of them, you know. And then some of them had to, hey, lady, shut the fuck up. They didn't swear, but, you know, shut up. I need to ask you these questions, instead of them waiting.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like with me as a sergeant, when I showed up on the scene, or as a first line officer, you know, where's this person at? You have to understand the psychology, you know. So they're in the medulla, they're in the dog brain. So how do we get them up into the logical brain? What's your social security number? What's your date of birth? So we start talking numbers, and they'll be like, and they'll stop. It's just like that, and they'll give you the information you're asking for, and then go right back into that screaming again. So, you know, when our dispatchers are pulling that information out of these people before we get there, it's like, salute. You know, we're all on the same team. You know, they call you first. You tell us where to go. And if the information's good, it's good. If not, then, you know, let's work together. Let's don't get mad. Like, I had officers do this. Damn fucking dispatchers, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's like, yeah, they know exactly what they're doing, and they're professionals at what they do. They're only giving you the information that they're being given. So it's the folks, and they do the best they can with what they got. Remember, they're the first to the party at the shit show. You're the next one through the door. So the police were the next, and then fire, and then EMS, or whichever. And interchangeably, everyone's role is different. But you guys are always the first one in. And I always felt that after that time, especially with the hard calls, you know, I always wanted to come up and I love the way you said that, give that gift of closure to those people, because, you know, they're just left hanging. It's like, hey, high five. And you walk by, and you guys get that all the time. It's like, oh, Emmy left hanging. Oh, you fuckers. But I always wanted to do that. And I always made a point that if I was really a dick, and I learned this as I got older, sometimes I meant to be an asshole, but there's times where it just came out wrong because I'm dealing with multiple things here on the ground, and I would call and say, hey, this is so-and-so. Yeah? No, I'm calling and say, I'm sorry. What? They're kind of like a dog that hears something strange, and I was like, what? Bro, you're calling to apologize. Yeah,
the head tilt and everything.
Yeah. Well, but like you were saying with your original FTO, be human. We need to be human. And the worst people in the world to one another, I think, is police officers. I mean, they are just vicious, man. They're at one another, just gutting one another from throat to groin. It's like, guys, why do we could be so vicious to one another? Let's be, and I was that guy. I'm not going to say I wasn't, back in my days when, it's either fuck you or, and you give back what you've gotten, and let's try and change that culture and be a little more empathetic. Empathy was something that I lacked, being a police officer for so many years, and think about, those people and what they're going through, and remember that even though you're in a pursuit, that guy was just in it with you, although he was the front car, but he still got all those emotions going on as well. And they're also, at the end of the day, even though they're breaking the law, they're still human, and those are the things we still have to remember.
Exactly.
So
beautiful.
So for the both of you, where do you see well, first, actually, I want to ask this first, because we're getting towards the end of this this recording here.
Wow,
but how did the name? It did. How did the name of the Shield Within for your podcast? How did you guys come up with that name to begin with?
I'll start it and David will finish it. How about that? So we decided we wanted to do a podcast to talk about therapy, and actually part of the podcast was going to be therapeutic for me. So I'm going to admit that selfishly, but I wanted to call it the Recovery Room. So we're in recovery. I thought, oh man, that'd be a good idea. Yeah, Google that one.
Cool,
a bazillion hits, and a lot of it was drug recovery and blah. So and so's recovery room. It's like, oh my god, that is just so faded. So David's very high thinking. David thinks up here, and I'm down here in the toilet all the time. But it's actually was his name. So go ahead, sir.
I was in an interesting period in my life where I was just kicked out of my marriage, and I was living with friends who were letting me live on their dime, bless their hearts. And I was sitting outside one afternoon in June when Mark and I had talked about this, and Mark called me up and said, hey, let's do a podcast. I'm like, sure. Why not? So we went from there, and we started talking about, what the content would be, which we found, it resonated instantly. And what the hell do we call it? So we went to recovery room. I then went, I don't know why, I was sitting out on the front porch in this beautiful sunshine, and I was writing and praying. I kind of do the two things at the same time. And the Shield came up inside me from somewhere, probably somewhere other than me. And next thing I know, it was like, okay, within the Shield, inside the Shield inside. It just kept playing with words, and the Shield within just showed itself up in front of me on the pad, and I looked at it, and I thought, that's it, the Shield within. So shared that with Mark. Mark said, cool.
Instantly fell in love with the name, because the metaphor there is that, even though we're all first responders, and, when we get down to the end of the day, we are men and women of service, right? So when you're hurting, are you going to put someone else first, or are you going to put yourself up first? And when you're in that stage that you need to reach down inside you and put up your shield within to protect you, to get you through this next phase of the shit, as David says, the shit you're going through. And then the intro, if you listen to our show, David wrote the intro and the outro. And then we just put music over it, and that's how it came together.
That's amazing, man. I love that. So
that's awesome.
I've got two questions for you as we have got about 5 minutes left. I'm going to go to David first and then to Mark. So David, for anyone out there who's listening to this, who might be on the fence about looking at getting some help or going to therapy or whichever, what is just some thoughts that you might have for those who are listening?
It's the hardest thing that you'll do in this journey is to make the first phone call.
Amen.
Everything after that will be easier. It won't be easy, but it'll be less difficult than that first call. When you decide to pick up the phone and say, I need help, it's really useful to have a direction to go in, because, you might call 911, they're not going to send you a therapist. So
Right.
You need to have some direction. And who do you talk to about that? Well, friends, family, other people you work with. Have an idea. Just understand when you start the journey that the most important thing is to make the decision. The second most important thing is to find someone to work with. And that involves a lot of variables. Money, insurance, location, time of appointment, frequency of appointment, and then the basic thing, which is fit. That person may have all the credentials in the world. You walk in the room and 3 minutes later, no fucking way am I going to tell this guy anything. And we've had first responders who've talked about going into therapist's office, sharing one story, and the therapist is blown away. I can't do this. This is too intense, whatever. So understand you make the first decision. That's the hardest one. Second one is pragmatic. Find someone you fit with. You call me, you let somebody know, Mark, whatever, we will find you a therapist. We'll find you 3 therapists in your zip code, because I'm connected to people all over the United States and the world in my network. So if this happens not all the time, but I got 2 of these to do when I get home, actually. I've got a lady in North Carolina and a lady in South Dayton, both of whom need a therapist. So I'm going to go home today and I'm going to find them 5 each. And you pick 3, you call them up and you say, I need a 15-minute freebie with such and such. And if that person says, well, we don't do that, well, then that's not the right person for you. And you call until you get 3 15-minute freebies, and you go home. Inside yourself, you ask a basic question. Can I see myself working with that person? And if the answer is yes, then you make the next decision. You commit to doing that therapy until it's done. And that will be hard, and it'll be inconvenient, and it might be expensive. But the commitment overrides the whole thing. And your commitment is to yourself, to the people around you that you love, starting with yourself.
Yes.
That's perfect. Damn.
Great
That
answer.
was perfect. Thank you so
As he
much
always-
for that. Yes.
I told you he's very high thinking.
I know, man. I see why they lovingly call you Yoda. I like Gandalf, but Yoda, I like them both.
Thank you, sir.
You're amazing, man. That was awesome. Mark, for you, if you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now to talk to yourself in the beginning of your public safety career, what advice would you give yourself?
Join the fire department.
For real? Like,
I'm kidding.
I've had people answer saying run.
Yeah,
they
run.
would tell themselves to run, and then they're like, no, I'm just playing.
No, seriously, for all my young officers out there, this is the advice I would give young Marc the Cop would be get into therapy sooner. Have a therapist online. If you're feeling great today, now's a great day to go find a therapist. And what Dr. David means by a 15-minute freebie is, will this therapist talk to me for 15 minutes without charging me a quarter of an hour? Mm-hmm. And that therapist should be the right person because they truly trust what mental health it is. If they're so up their own ass that, oh, well, I don't give any time away. Well, okay, I'm going to keep looking. Be sure your therapist is first responder savvy. I had some experiences with officers where they went in and shocked their therapist, and their therapist was literally crying at the end of their session. They're like, "I just got
man.
about you." Oh yeah, it's a true story. Yeah, they fucked their therapist up. Just talking about their story. So if they don't know first responder shit, maybe that's not the therapist for you. Mm-hmm. Therapy early and often, and the reason why I mean that is get on their books because, like me, I was very, very blessed to get in to see David in 2 weeks. I was in crisis today, And it isn't today when you try and create a plan. We all have a plan, right? Fire drills, what to happen in case of a tornado. We plan, right? So we don't plan for, oh, fuck, there's a big twisty cloud out there. What should we do? But that's where we are in public safety when we find that we're in crisis. We want to develop the plan while we're in crisis. So let's do this. All of us, fire, EMS, police, dispatch, corrections, let's find a therapist when we're feeling good, okay? Get on their books, get that intake done. Check in with them every 6 months, and if they want their 15 minutes then, pay them. But have it done, because when, not if, when the shit show happens, guess what? You can get right in and see them. So it's more early therapy. I would learn that in the worst thing, the absolute worst advice I was given as a young officer was don't tell your wife. Don't tell your family. You know why? Because they won't understand it. Well, they may not understand that you just went on a car crash scene and this guy's face is ripped off, but they understand that you're upset. And they'll be there for you,
right?
To prop you up and to help you. I didn't do that. What did I do? I went isolated like everybody else did. What's one of the first signs of PTSD?
Isolation.
Thank you very much, Dr. David. So now, before I even recognized that I had PTSD, post-traumatic stress, I'm already isolating, dealing with my shit. So what'd that do? That just started pulling me away from the woman I love and that I committed to. And that's what happened. I mean, I've been married for 35 years, and everybody's like, how'd you and Mark get along so well? My wife's like, we take a break every 10 years. which was true. Life through public safety, the last time her and I were separated, it was for 4 years. We're back together now. Everything's great. I'm no longer a cop. I retired in 21. But there again, early mental health services will help you. Doesn't mean you're crazy. I had that talk yesterday. So you think I'm crazy now? I said, no, I don't. But you're going through trauma right now, I'm telling my friend. So now's a good time to get that base shored up. What has stayed the test of time has been the pyramids in Egypt, right? Thousands of years those pyramids have been there. And why have they been there so long? Because they have a wide, strong base. So to make your base wide and strong, keep 4 things in mind. And we talk about it all the time on the Shield Within. Your family, your faith, your friends, and your favorite activities. Keep those things going. It's just like the analogy of 4 legs of the table that we're sitting at right now. Those 4 legs, David and I can get up on this table and jump up and down, and it's good and strong, right? But you take a leg away, what do we have? It's strong, but it's not as strong. Take another leg away. Now you only got 2 legs. That son of a bitch is wobbling. And when I walked into Dr. David's office, I had 1 leg on the ground, and that was it. So, keep that base of friends. I also recommend don't have only first responder friends in your world. Keep those friends that are like, oh my God, you saw what? Or tell me a good story.
Right, agreed.
And, and I didn't tell the gory shit, which they want to hear. Tell the stupid stuff. Like we did lockouts at my city where you locked yourself out of your car, right? So I went down there. Okay, where's the card? Here it is. And the woman comes bringing me the keys. And I'm like, I thought you were locked out. Well, I am.
Right, yeah.
Ooh, you have the key. But she starts pushing the clicker, but it won't unlock. And I said, let me show you something. But the key, and then unlock the car. So that's the goofy shit you share with your friends. The gory shit, the faces hanging off. Save that for first responder talk. But, have friends outside your area. Get into therapy. Get there early. And don't think therapy's going to be so bad. You're not fucked up. You're just in a weak spot. And it's like the Beatles said, I get by with a little help from my friends. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Very good.
Perfectly said, and a great way to end this as well. Damn, this has been so much fun with the both of you.
May your days and nights find you strong and safe. May you take your place as your family's face. As you do the shit that we won't do. As you embrace the risk you must go through. May you grow in strength and heal and find your heart, your soul, and your mind. You look at your life and grin. You have a home, the Shield Within.